Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a brand new study from the journal iScience that literally cracks a 400-year-old cold case. We're talking about the Medicis, one of history's wealthiest, most powerful families. For centuries, there's been this dark cloud of suspicion hanging over the Florence dynasty. But thanks to some mind-blowing modern science, we finally have the answers. So, let's dive right in and see exactly how ancient DNA just rewrote the history books. To set the scene, picture a warm October day, back in 1587. Grand Duke Francesco de' Medici and his brother Cardinal Giovanni are suddenly struck down by a mysterious, raging fever. Now, the doctors at the time, they initially thought it was just a natural illness. But you know how it goes, almost instantly the rumor mill started churning. The prime suspect? Their own envious younger brother, Ferdinando. The whispers of poisoning spread like wildfire, cementing this as a classic, ruthless family assassination story. But we really have to ask, was it a calculated family murder, or was there a silent killer on the loose?
To fully grasp the sheer tragedy of this, we need to look at the family timeline. The Medicis had immense banking wealth and unbelievable political power, but absolutely none of it could protect them from this persistent threat. Look at 1562. Francesco's mother and several siblings died just a month after taking a trip to coastal Tuscany. Then we hit that fateful October in 1587 when Francesco and Giovanni die. Fast forward through hundreds of years of endless rumors, and it isn't until 2026 that modern paleopathologists finally crack the case.
Historians have literally been debating their demise for hundreds of years. On one hand, you have the juicy theory of a calculating, envious younger brother using poison to seize power. I mean, it's straight out of a Renaissance thriller, right? But on the other hand, there's the original suspicion of those 16th century doctors, a deadly environmental disease lurking in the swamps and river plains surrounding the city.
So what if the culprit wasn't human at all? Let's take a step back from the murder suspects for a second and profile the real killer that was stalking the marshes of Renaissance Europe. We have to remember the environment these folks were living in. As far back as the 2nd century, the Greco-Roman physician Galen was already describing these exact types of fevers. Those coastal wetlands and river plains were essentially the perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes, allowing a highly lethal disease to absolutely run rampant.
And that brings us to the true culprit, Plasmodium falciparum. This is a terrifyingly deadly mosquito-borne protozoan parasite. The data actually shows that malaria might have arrived in Europe as early as the 4th millennium BCE, and records prove this specific parasite had firmly set up shop in Italy between the 1st and 2nd century CE. It was an ancient microscopic predator, and it thrived in those wetlands.
Now, to grasp just how lethal and stubborn this silent killer really is, we can't just look at the history books. We have to look at the staggering 280 million global malaria infections recorded in the year 2024 alone. Let that number sink in for a second. 280 million. This is absolutely not just an ancient problem. It's a continuously evolving global health crisis.
And tragically, out of those modern infections, we saw over 500,000 deaths. It's a brutal, sobering reminder of just how lethal this ancient disease remains today. Plasmodium falciparum is still the absolute deadliest species that causes malaria. So when we picture the Medicis and their sudden fevers, we have to realize they were going up against one of the most effective natural killers in all of human history.
Valentina Giuffra, a paleopathologist at the University of Pisa, really puts this into perspective. She points out that malaria was one of the single most widespread infectious diseases in Renaissance Italy. It was this inescapable public health burden. In fact, it was a massive problem in southern continental Europe right up until the 20th century. It took major land reclamation projects and intense mosquito control to finally eradicate it in that region.
Okay, so how do you catch a historical killer centuries after the trail goes completely cold? Well, welcome to the Forensic Lab. Modern forensic investigators, specifically an amazing team of paleopathologists, managed to interrogate ancient DNA to finally get us some real answers.
To solve this cold case, the researchers, led by Serena Tucci over at Yale University, used a totally fascinating three-step process. First, they carefully extracted genetic materials straight from the centuries-old skeletal remains of the Medici brothers. Second, they compared that extracted material against a massive global database of ancient samples. And finally, they worked to isolate the exact strain of the Plasmodium DNA to figure out exactly what they were dealing with.
The physical evidence they managed to collect was incredibly precise. The team meticulously sampled DNA from 3 of Francesco's actual rib bones and 1 of Giovanni's rib bones. Then, to make sure their findings were rock solid, they matched this ancient genetic material against 9 known ancient malaria-bearing samples. And these were collected from remains all over the globe, Europe, Asia, and the Americas. It was just this painstaking process of elimination.
The success of this approach is honestly just remarkable. Yale's Serena Tucci perfectly captures the excitement of the breakthrough. She noted that her team was incredibly thrilled to uncover distinct DNA fragments of Plasmodium falciparum still lingering in the samples. I mean, just imagine that. Hundreds of years after these men were laid to rest, the genetic fingerprint of their killer was still hiding right there inside their bones, just waiting to be discovered.
And the lab results? Absolutely stunning. For Grand Duke Francesco, the genetic analysis revealed the DNA of not one, but 2 malarial species, P. falciparum and P. malariae. That conclusively confirmed he contracted the disease. But the plot totally thickens with Cardinal Giovanni. His remains harbored a never-before-seen, deadly, mutated strain of Plasmodium falciparum featuring 2 novel mutations. This totally new strain is closely related to lineages that existed for centuries in places like Austria, France, Spain, and even as far as Taiwan and the Caribbean.
So, with all this microscopic forensic evidence laid out, conclusively proving that the Medici brothers died of natural mosquito-borne causes, we can finally deliver the verdict. This 400-year-old cold case, it is officially closed.
As expert paleopathologist Albert Zink points out, this rigorous science does something incredibly important for the historical record. It completely exonerates the younger brother, Ferdinando, from centuries of murder allegations. The whispers, the malicious rumors, the dramatic tales of poisoned wine, they were all pure fiction. The real killer was just a tiny mosquito from the Tuscan marshes.
Lead author Serena Tucci reflects on this whole process beautifully. She says, "Sometimes, working on ancient DNA truly feels like looking directly through the keyhole of history. And it really is a powerful reminder of how modern science and microscopic evidence can reach back through time, clear an innocent man's name, and completely rewrite the history books." Which leaves us with this final, thrilling question to ponder. If a 400-year-old royal murder mystery can be conclusively solved simply by sequencing DNA from a brittle old rib bone, what other massive historical secrets are just waiting to be uncovered in the dust? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found this deep dive as fascinating as I did. Keep questioning history and keep learning.